All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I know it has been a little bit, but due to some illnesses and some travel plans and some busy weekends, me and Alex decided to take a break. But we welcome you all to episode 9 of Two Takes with Alex and Tate. I, of course, am Tate. That, of course, is Alex. Alex, a lot has happened since the last time we were doing this, and it's good to be back. There's just so many things to talk about. So, do you have anything you want to say before we get going?
Oh man, if I were a quarterback in the NFL today and I were starting, I would be paying all kinds of money for whatever preventative disappointing injuries I can protect against because it's rough out here for quarterbacks. The
Bruh.
people I don't know how many like different starters we've had this year. Um, I mean, poor Zach Wilson's still giving it his best shot, which is not good enough after Aaron Rodgers went down in the first four plays of their entire season, and Jimmy G got benched for being Jimmy G. So what are we gonna do with that? But no, I've been watching. I've been impressed with some of these teams lately. Some outlier seasons a little bit. I've been liking, especially like these Texans. Whew, can't get enough of that.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
it's
CJ,
amazing. CJ,
unbelievable. Yeah,
so good. He's the best one in the draft class by far. Like already an NFL quarterback. Don't like yeah, sorry about you, Bryce. Um
CJ just quickly has already surpassed the rookie of the year conversation to me. It has supplanted himself into the MVP conversation.
oh
And he is so far above any other rookie, even the other kind of standouts. Puka Nakua was having a great year. Jordan Addison had some flashes where he looks like unbelievable. But what CJ has been able to do has been beyond impressive and may end up being the best rookie quarterback season we have ever seen in the NFL from start to finish. There's a few guys that would be in contention. Justin Herbert would have been in that mix, not even that long ago, but he is on pace to do things that we've only seen prime Aaron Rodgers and prime Tom Brady do. So really, really remarkable what he's been able to do, I think, so far this season. And I think he's getting better too. So AFC better be on watch for CJ Stroud in the not only this year, but in the future and the years to come.
oh yeah. Yeah. No, it's gonna be interesting to watch his career. But Tate, I've decided I'm gonna be the one asking the questions today
Okay.
because you like to talk. It's
I
called
do.
with Alex and Tate, but it at one point was Tate's takes. So we're just gonna lean into that spirit as we move forward with the name change. All
Okay.
right, so Tate, what team or teams have you seen from the AFC that have you saying, all right, those are the absolute favorites? Let's hear them.
The favorite in the AFC, I think, should be Kansas City. And here's why. Their defense is playing as well as almost any defense in the league outside of maybe Baltimore and Cleveland. I still think they will get the offense turned around. I think after this bye week, Andy Reid will unleash some plays in his repertoire that we haven't been seeing against some of the poorer teams in the AFC, against some of these easier matchups, against some games that they thought they probably could win anyway. And up to this point, they have been mostly correct. They still have the one seed in the AFC if the playoffs started today. So it's not like it's this disaster that I think it's been painted out to be. Yes, their lack of a star receiver or even a really good B level receiver is somewhat concerning. But I think Rashee Rice, I think McCole Hardman, I think they will be able to find enough production moving forward from that position. I think Mahomes is going to start playing better. I think the offensive line is going to start playing better. And I think Travis Kelsey can carry that receiving room enough where they should still be the favorite, given the fact that their defense is by far the best we have seen with a Patrick Mahomes team so far in his career. I like Baltimore. And before the Mark Andrews injury, I think there would have been an argument that Baltimore should have been the favorite in the AFC because they have been just putting the beat down on pretty good teams. I think they beat Seattle 37-3. They beat the Lions about 38-3. They obviously beat the Bengals on Thursday night handily, even though Joe Burrow got hurt. So, that's a little bit of a, you put an asterisk by that one, maybe a little bit, but they have still been just routing these teams. But I think in the specific matchup of Kansas City versus Baltimore, that Mark Andrews injury is such a blow because Kansas City has really, really good cornerbacks. McDuffie is turning into one of the elite corners in the league. And on the other side, they are very well off at cornerback. So I think what they'll be able to do is really pack the box against Lamar, bring blitz. Lamar hasn't been historically a very good against the blitz quarterback. So I think not having his favorite target, the most reliable player on that offense, and Mark Andrews in that specific matchup will really, really hurt the Ravens moving forward. And side note, the team that I think could have actually beaten Kansas City in the AFC just lost their quarterback for the season in Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. If the Ravens were going to make the Super Bowl, I think it would have been because Cincinnati knocked off Kansas City, and then the Ravens are a hard matchup for Cincinnati. So that's kind of off the table too, where the team that you might have thought could have beaten Kansas City in the playoffs that wasn't Baltimore is now eliminated. So Baltimore is going to have to do the dirty work themselves and going to have to find a way to beat Kansas City if they want to make the Super Bowl. And I just don't think without Mark Andrews, they're going to be able to do it. So that's why I think the Chiefs still, even though it hasn't looked pretty, I don't trust the Dolphins as much when it comes down to a fist fight. We saw them kind of lose a game where the score was closer than the game to Kansas City over in Germany. That game in the playoffs would likely be in Kansas City and not on a neutral field, which obviously is going to favor Kansas City a little bit. And then none of the other teams to me are ready in the AFC to really compete in the postseason with a team with the pedigree like the Kansas City Chiefs. So Kansas City, do you agree?
I agree with that take. I mean, just looking around, yeah, you go through the Browns might have just because of their defense, but Deshaun's out, which
I think a rookie fifth round is going to be Pat in
no.
Arrowhead in the playoffs. See, I just don't. And yeah, I think the Browns are a great team. I think it's absolutely tragic that they had, the deal for Deshaun Watson. That's, unfortunately, well, depending on how you look at it, it is not going well to say the least, that trade so far. He's made about $95 million and has played about 12 games and is out for the season again. So not great.
It's bad. It's bad. He hasn't even made that much because they restructured his deal twice already. So I was watching the next 3 years. He's got a cap hit of over 60 million, and you have to build a championship winning roster with that books. It's not going to happen. So their window's shut now. Yeah, the Bengals could have probably done it, but Joe
don't know
Burrow.
this. A couple of weeks ago, I was getting ready to come on this podcast and say, I'm really afraid for the Chiefs because of the Bengals. And they were really starting to click. After that 49ers game, I don't think we got to talk about that one. They looked like they were playing as well as any team in the league a couple of weeks ago. Burrow looked awesome. They dropped the game to Houston, but CJ looks like a superstar. So that was a game they should have won, but I still thought they were very, very dangerous in the AFC. And
Yeah.
now, they're not a playoff team without Joe Burrow. I mean, I
Nope.
don't think anyone would think they are. So that's really going to be, how weird would it be if the Bengals and the Bills both end up missing the playoffs after kind of taking both trying to claim as the Chiefs' biggest rival? They both may miss.
Well, one of us called the Bills not making the playoffs, which again, I'm gonna go on record. The Jets sweeping the Bills still on the board.
And
until tomorrow.
the thing about it is too, what's really, and this is I think gonna impede on our next topic a little bit, but it's fine. What's really disappointing about the Bills season is your prediction of the Jets being really good hasn't panned out, and they're still gonna miss the playoffs. It's like Aaron Rodgers, that was one less great team to worry about. No, I guess you could say Houston has kind of replaced the Jets in that little who's going to get the wild card. Like Houston's kind of turned out being what we were hoping the Jets was going to be almost, but the Bills, yeah, just a disaster for them. And, Cincinnati, how disappointing, for the whole NFL and all sports fans, like even it's no secret by now I root for the Chiefs, it's really you don't want to win that way. It's like you want to win the Super Bowl, but you want everyone to be at their best. You want to beat the best teams, and I think it's just disappointing for everyone. I think that Joe Burrow's out, one of the more likable players. I think we both agree pretty easily cemented as the second best quarterback in the league. And with him and Rodgers going down, I mean, just the lack of excitement and great quarterback play, it's like that's two teams that would have been huge draws for ratings and really threats to make deep playoff runs. None of that's going to end up coming to fruition. So,
Yeah, the one. So that is getting into the next segment, which again, Tate, I'm asking the questions here. But
yeah.
I do want to kind of mention to Joe Burrow as being the unquestioned second best quarterback in the league. I agree with it. However, how many seasons has Joe Burrow played where he didn't miss significant time because of injury?
And that is a great point because the best ability is availability. And I think we have to start giving some credit to Jalen Hurts and really trying to put him in that category because he has shown time and time again he's available. He has shown such composure through adversity in his career, even going back to his days in Alabama, then at OU, and even more so in the NFL. I think his demeanor, his intangibles are so extremely good. I mean, just such a high level of all that stuff. And he keeps improving with the tangibles as a football player, too. He hasn't been 100% this year, I don't think, with his knee injury. And he still may win the MVP. I mean, and the Eagles have the best record in the league. And one thing I love about Jalen Hurts, and we're going to meander a little bit today, but one thing I absolutely love about Jalen Hurts and the Eagles is they don't lose games they shouldn't lose. Like all the other great teams, we saw the Niners lose to PJ Walker. We don't even have to bring up the Cowboys because everybody knows the Cowboys have a tendency to lose those games. The Lions got rolled by Baltimore. Not really any shame in that, but they it wouldn't be shocking if they lost a game they shouldn't. The Bengals, we just talked about kind of blowing one to Houston. He's a good team, but that's a game Cincinnati should have won. The Bills, we don't have to talk about. Baltimore lost to the Browns when they had a 20-point lead. It's like all these teams tend to find ways to lose games they should win, including the Chiefs. Even the opening week comes to mind. The game against Denver where Denver's looking a little better, by the way. And shout out to Sean Payton. I don't know how much we're going to talk Broncos today, but he has done an excellent job turning that franchise around. But you still would have thought the Chiefs could have beat that team, and they didn't. And the Eagles just never lose games like that almost, it seems, where they may have one a year and everybody else has two or three, and I think that's all Jalen Hurts and his consistency at that position that he brings every day, the leadership that he provides. His teammates, I think, lean on him, and that locker room totally relies on Jalen, and he gets them ready to go every week. The coach obviously plays part of that too, but I think Jalen's demeanor, his work ethic, his intangibles, and his kind of relentless desire to improve at his sports and hone his craft, I think everybody in the locker room follows that. And I think they bring it every week. And even when they don't play 100%, they find ways to win those games,
I do think it's kind of funny. The last thing I'll touch on, and this sticks within the AFC North, we've heard, and I've been one of those to say it for years now. Lamar Jackson is always going to be great until he loses a step, and he's going to be getting hurt all the time. And this year, we've seen the other three quarterbacks from the AFC North go down, two with season-ending injuries,
Right.
and then Pickett had to miss time. Like, so Lamar Jackson's ability to stay on the field as he's developing his passing, which is his passing attack's getting a lot better. Um, I'm keeping my eye on Baltimore. I'm not going to say they're the favorites, but I'm keeping my eye on them because they're
Well,
starting to gel.
they've been playing the best in the AFC the last few weeks, I would say. Like
Yeah,
they've really played well the last 3 or 4 weeks, and been very impressive. Lamar has been very impressive. The running game, everyone made a big fuss about the passing game and the new offensive coordinator this offseason, but the running game's really been the star of that show in Baltimore. They have a boatload of rushing touchdowns, and the defense has been just awesome. I think the best two defenses in the league, probably in this order, are Cleveland and then Baltimore. And I think in the argument of that next group would be Kansas City, which is, Steelers probably in that next group. Their defense is always, including this year, really, really good. But yeah, I think Baltimore has the second best defense in the league right now. So yeah, I wouldn't say they're not a threat at all in the AFC. I just don't know how much I trust Lamar to go win a playoff game in Arrowhead is the thing. And it's looking right now like the playoffs are going to end up going through Arrowhead in the AFC again, which shouldn't
yeah,
surprise anybody at this point, but still, there was some, is a little up in the air maybe a couple of weeks ago. Now Kansas City definitely has the inside track to have the AFC totally run through Kansas City. And I think that's a big ask for anybody, including a team without their best offensive weapon in Mark Andrews.
that's true. All right, so Tate, AFC, all of the AFC, you got a lot to choose from. Uh, which team has been the most disappointing for you?
Okay. We talked about the Bengals already, but honorable mention Bengals, Joe Burrow getting hurt is just a disaster for everybody. Another honorable mention, even though the team has succeeded, is Deshaun Watson specifically because we touched on that contract. Highest cap hit in NFL history each of the next 3 years. He's played a total of 12 games. And God, can you imagine if they had a guy like Baker Mayfield today? Like how good they would be feeling as a franchise. Like it's a shame they couldn't get someone like that on the roster. I mean, like with that defense and this running game,
Like
man,
a guy with
that'd be
guy
something.
play through injury, the guy who's won you a playoff game. What?
Right. Another honorable mention that I think we have to bring up is the Patriots. And I almost chose the Patriots as my answer, but here's the thing about the Patriots. If I wake up today and I'm a 2-win New England team, I'm kind of thinking, well, shoot, man, we might get Caleb Williams. It can't be that. It's like, that's not too bad. We'll at least be in the Drake May sweepstakes, who's be the first pick in the draft almost any other year. So you can't say that's the biggest disappointment because Mac Jones was never going to be the guy. So it's like, okay, if we have one terrible year where it's really hard to watch, but then we get the guy, there's a lot of franchises that would trade place with getting Caleb Williams. You know what I mean? There's a lot of franchises that would feel better than instead of winning 5 games, if you could have Caleb Williams and win two. I think there's a lot of team fans that would take that. The players always try to win. But my biggest disappointment in the AFC is the Buffalo Bills. And here is why. The defense looked great week 3, I think it was, against the Dolphins. Hasn't been as impressive since then. They haven't been terrible, but they haven't been this dominant force that we thought of them of in years past. The Von Miller contract is getting worse every year. And you sign a guy in his 30s to a 6-year, $120 million deal because you're trying to win the Super Bowl. And they're not even close. And the problem is Josh Allen is regressing. And when they gave him that contract and when they gave Von Miller that contract, it looked like Josh Allen was going to be at worst the third best quarterback for the next few years. I don't know that he's top 5 today. I did my list a few weeks back where I think I had him in the top 5. I don't know that I could put him in the top 5 today. He is turning the ball over at such a rate where it's just shooting themselves in the foot every week. And it would be really, really difficult as a defense to keep getting motivated to go back out there. I know Stefon Diggs is maybe on his way out. The tweet that Trayvon posted, where he basically said 14 got to get up out of there. I don't think he posts something like that unless Stefon is in his other ear and talking to him, and at least he's not telling him not to do it, Stefon. It's like if he was really set on the Buffalo Bills and really believed in what they were doing, I think he would have been like, hey, man, you better take that down, but I think that's a really, really bad sign. And the guy that could fix Josh Allen appeared to be in the building and is now coaching in New York, in Brian Daboll. And I think what we're going to see at some point in the near future is a team with a defensive coordinator like Sean McDermott, or a defensive head coach, I should say, like Sean McDermott, and an offensive coordinator that they like even more than the defensive minded head coach like Brian Daboll. I think we're going to see a team in short order move on from the head coach and promote the offensive coordinator to head coach. And I think we're seeing that's what they should have done in Buffalo. I don't think McDermott is the guy that can get him over the hump. I don't know that Josh Allen is going to. I don't think he's going to get it together this season and maybe for one more season. I'm not going to say he can't get it back in his career because the ceiling that everybody sees flashes of is just otherworldly. So I think he will at some point find a way to get back, but they're going to have to bring in a head coach, maybe even someone like Kellen Moore, or Eric Bieniemy, who's having a great year coaching the offense for the Commanders. I think there's some candidates out there that might could bring Josh Allen back to that MVP level, but it is not looking good for the Buffalo Bills. And you called it. They are totally imploding. I liked the Jets this weekend with the points because I think if the Jets can get an early turnover on Josh Allen, they just don't handle adversity at all right now. And I think when you look at the path they have taken over the last 3 seasons where you lose, conference finals 3 years ago in Kansas City, no shame in that. Everybody loses in Kansas City. Then you go back the next year in round 2 and lose an absolute classic in the famous 13 seconds game, and then overtime you don't get the ball back. That's just a heartbreaker. And then the next year you get your ass kicked by Cincinnati in the playoffs. I may be missing one year, but they have continuously gotten further and further away from the goal. And I think they're just having a hard time focusing on the week to week, day to day. And they had this obsession with beating the Kansas City Chiefs, getting the Super Bowl, even down to posting a picture of the Lombardi trophy in their training facility is just missing the forest for the trees, or missing the trees for the forest. They're not focusing on whatever. They're not focusing on the day to day. They're not in their routine. The vibes are off, however you want to put it. I would feel really disappointed as a Bills fan and not very confident that they're going to get back to the level they were at over the next 2 or 3 seasons either.
Yeah, I would say, how am I going to say this? I would say if I were a Bills fan, I would be disappointed. But I'm a Bills hater, not really. I'm a Bills truther, which means I saw this coming. Like we talked about it a lot. Josh Allen, as soon as he starts playing hero ball, he's not got Brian Daboll in his ear, like telling him to calm down, do the check down, scramble for a little bit, don't hurdle guys 7 yards from a conversion.
Right.
Don't throw into triple coverage. A million different things you could tell him to not do. And even Josh Allen going and talking with Tom Brady on that podcast where Tom Brady is like, you don't have to do everything all of the time, and
And
you just
his
as soon.
attitude was basically like, I think I'm going to do what I want. It's like, man, that's Tom Brady. That's not me and Alex sitting in our living rooms telling you to take the check down. That is the greatest player to ever play in the NFL, giving you good advice about how you should turn the ball over less and not play every play like it's for the game. It's like there's a lot of times this season, there's been a lot of times where it's like, okay, Josh Allen, if you play the game like Kirk Cousins' average game, not his best game, but where you just don't turn it over. You maybe make a couple nice throws, but you're just handing the ball off, hitting the open guy, making the easy completions. They would probably be the 1 seed right now. But
Yeah,
because of these turnovers, they are looking at missing the playoffs despite Cincinnati and the Jets both being out of the playoff race. Two teams that a lot of people had preseason making the playoffs. Those two teams are out, and the Bills still are looking at the outside, or on the outside looking in at the playoff picture right now.
yeah, and I think it's 100% on Josh Allen. I did like the idea that you mentioned of like team management moving off of defensive minded head coaches and replacing them with offensive coordinators that are really good. And I have a feeling that might be on the verge of happening in my team for the year, Tampa Bay, because Todd Bowles looks outmatched almost every single week. Doesn't know how to use clock management, doesn't like to challenge things that like his defense, which is supposed to be his signature, like can get beat crazily by almost any rookie quarterback. He's just now they're starting to right the ship, I think, but Dave Canales has finally had his offense start to gel. Like so, whenever they lost to the Texans, they still put up
37.
yeah
Yeah.
37 points. Like they still put up points.
What a
So
fun thing that was.
that was one of the best games all year. And nobody really wants to talk about it, but like except for CJ Stroud did amazingly. And it's like no, Todd Bowles just had like the worst defensive schemes like we've ever seen.
Both
Um,
those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. CJ played a great game, but the defense wasn't great. Yeah.
usually they go hand in hand though, you
Yeah.
know.
No. Yeah, sure.
But so yeah, my disappointing, and this is going to be a weird one because I've got a tie for top two of AFC most disappointing, and it's going to sound weird to people who are only looking at box scores, but the Jaguars and
Yeah.
the Steelers, because both of those teams have a record that's better than it probably should be. Trevor Lawrence is just as bad as or not Lamar Jackson, as bad as Josh Allen with turning the ball over just on a whim, like throws picks. Crazy problem with fumbles. It's like the
Yeah.
second coming of Daniel Jones, which is what he's not supposed to be doing.
Oh, don't do him like that.
Well, it's only because I believe in him. I love Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
Like what oh, you watch those games, and if it wasn't for ETN sometimes, which is crazy to say about a running back, like whenever your quarterback is Trevor Lawrence, that the running back has actually kept your team in games. That's
ET's been the second most productive running back in the league this year behind McCaffrey, really. He's been awesome.
it's insanity. And so I'm just like I know the Jags are I think 6-3. I want to say something like that.
That's right.
they're they're going to the playoffs unless something massively wrong happens or if we see this trend continue to like spiral, which I don't think it will. But you just can't be happy with the product that they're putting out right
Yeah.
now.
I'm going to totally agree with Jacksonville. I think they haven't, the offense just can't get it going. And some of it, I think, is they build an early lead. They have a pretty good defense, and then they run the ball. And Trevor's numbers, I think, sometimes take a hit because they get up. And ETN has been so effective that he scored a lot of touchdowns on drives where maybe Trevor would have a couple more throughout the season if ETN wasn't on fire the way that he is. But it hasn't looked as good. And I thought Trevor Lawrence had a chance to win the MVP preseason. He is not even close to that conversation. He hasn't been near as good as I thought. I think there's something to be said with them still being 6-3 because they found a way to win ugly. And if the offense can start clicking a little bit like the conversation we've had with Kansas City, if the offense in Jacksonville can get going, they're a scary team. And I think they have the weapons to do it. I think you're hoping if you're Jacksonville to buy helped, right? It's like you're hoping that, okay, we're going to regroup, regather. Trevor's going to start slinging it. We're going to really start playing good down the stretch here. And I still think they're dangerous. But yeah, to this point, despite the record, I think it's been really disappointing. I totally disagree about Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh, and I know this is going to be different because I am not in Pittsburgh. My ear's not on the ground, and I am not in the city. I'm not as much of a Steelers fan. If they had Trevor Lawrence at quarterback and looked like this on offense, it would be disappointing. But I thought they've got a lot out of their team so far this year, and that they're 6-3 is pretty remarkable given how they've played on offense, which I know is going to sound funny because this is almost exactly what I said about Jacksonville. But Kenny Pickett is not Trevor Lawrence. No one thought Kenny Pickett was going to be in the MVP conversation. No one thought Kenny Pickett looks like he may be one of those guys that's on the bridging the gap between a starter and a backup in the NFL, where it's like, is he a really bad starter or is he a really good backup? You know, that's kind of where Kenny Pickett looks. He tends to make like one great throw a game down the sideline, and it ends up being enough, and they find a way to win these games. And in that division, I'm looking at it now, they are, tied in the loss column for first place with Baltimore. So I think if you're Pittsburgh, are you disappointed in how the offense has played? Sure. As an overall team, I don't think you could be disappointed in Pittsburgh right now. I think it's kind of one of those like, whoo, how the heck are we 6-3? But this, it's like what a season so far. It's like we're making the playoffs.
I stand by my chant to call for Matt Canada's job because even a backup would have Pickens getting touchdowns left and right, because you didn't mention Kenny Pickett as an MVP, like preseason MVP. Like, yeah, he could be in the race.
Yeah.
Pickens, though, especially after last year's kind of coming out year, there was like, keep an eye on that guy. Right. If we're gonna consider that positions that aren't QB could be like race for MVP, right? Pickens is a stud for sure. Freiermuth, great. Like, Najee.
He's got to go with the last 5 weeks or even a little more than that, where that's kind of, there's some running backs that just get better as the season goes on. I think Najee's going to end up falling into that category a lot of years. And their other running back, Jaylen Warren, has also been productive. So they just kind of leaned on the running game and the defense and trying to not have Kenny lose them the game. And they just, there's a lot of the old saying in the NFL is you lose a lot more games than you win. And they are just a classic, let's let the other team lose the game. It's like they just kind of make a play.
The most frustrating thing, though, then has to be that, like, all right, who's in our division? What are the quarterbacks that we're facing that are being asked to win the game for their teams? And how much better are those guys? So I guess I have to amend my disappointment, because if after you've seen so many games where for 52 minutes Kenny Pickett gets outplayed by a huge margin, and you're not just like, all right, we either need to start calling we need to start keeping an eye out on some free agent quarterbacks that are actually good. Like we need to be making plays for that, or we need to be low key tanking so we can go get our guy because we have to face Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and one armed Deshaun Watson, and like we have to have good quarterback play. So I'm just
I'm
disappointed
going to
with.
throw two names out for you as a Steelers fan. How would you feel about these two guys coming to town in Pittsburgh? Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray.
I'd be good with Kyler. I think he could give a really good spark. I don't want Kirk. Kirk Cousins should just retire. Like at this point, he's like
Might get hurt. He was balling before he got hurt.
he
He
was.
was playing lights out though before he got hurt. You have to give him some credit. He was playing on fire.
That's why you always never wait till the party dies to leave, man. you
And
you
Kyler may be a good buy low kind of situation. And I think Kyler in that offense could be electric where he can kind of run around and make plays and get these guys the ball.
Oh yeah, especially
And
because Arizona, no matter what, is drafting a quarterback. I don't care what they say.
it looks like they are to me.
Yeah,
I
so like
agree. It looks like they're going to be bad enough where the worst thing that could happen to them is that they end up getting like the fifth pick or something like that and kind of missing on the top three quarterbacks. It's like, but
but they were like
at that
eight of
point, at that point, you might hang on to Kyler, but I don't really see it.
yeah.
I think
I,
they're moving on.
I don't know, but so that's my disappointing. I'm real disappointed that the Steelers aren't serious enough about like no, we need an offense also in nowadays NFL. We can't just have the defense. It works for them, but
Yeah.
like they're the only team that works for at this point, and it's not going to work for very long. And then Jacksonville, yeah, it's just you're winning, but it's not.
Well,
It's not really
the,
wins.
the I guess the expectations were my take came from because my expectations for Pittsburgh was like, hey, what if they could get the 7 seed in the playoffs and like have the competitive first round playoff game? It's like that'd be a good season for them this year. In Jacksonville, it was like they may make the conference finals and both teams look about the same. So that's why if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm like, hey, like this is kind of exciting. And if I'm Jacksonville, I'm kind of irritated.
Yeah. All
So,
right, NFC. We're switching gears. We're going to the
other side, there's two sides of the football.
the National Football Conference. Uh, who is the most inspiring? Who's your favorite?
So I think we talked about this team a lot already. So I'm gonna touch on them and give you some reasons why these other teams are not my favorite. But the favorite to me should be Philly, not only in the standings, just eye test wise. I think the brotherly shove is a pretty big advantage. I think the defense is getting better. I think the defensive line is dominant. I think they have everything you would want from a team looking to get back to the Super Bowl. I think they have just elite level quarterback play. I'll call him elite. I think Jalen's elite level quarterback play. I think elite level leadership from the quarterback position. And the guys seem to like Nick Sirianni. I'm not crazy about his personality from the outside looking in, but it seems to resonate with him, and I got to give him some credit. He seems like a goofball, but they never, they don't lose a lot of games that they should win. And I think that's got to be on the coach in some regard. I think he has to play a part in that. So, yeah, for those reasons, I think Philly should be the favorite. They obviously I'm looking at the standings now. They have a couple game lead on almost everyone except for Detroit. Detroit may end up being the 1 seed, but Philly is not scared of going to Detroit and beating the Lions. I can tell you that much right now. Maybe a shootout, but that's not a team Philly's afraid of. Speaking of the Lions, why are the Lions not the favorite? I don't think Jared Goff is as good as Jalen Hurts. I don't think they're very good on defense still. I think they're a little young around Jared Goff. I don't think he's quite good enough to go into Philly and win a playoff game in January. And I don't think the defense can stop him. Right. And I think there's a couple bad matchups for the Lions being Philly and San Francisco. San Francisco, this is going to sound funny, but you know what I was thinking of watching that San Francisco Jacksonville game?
What?
San Francisco's not a Super Bowl team. I know that sounds crazy in a game that they won by 30 points, but Brock Purdy, I'm becoming less sold on him as the season progresses. And I was pretty neutral on him going into the year, thinking he was a good player. He made a couple throws in that game that ended up being touchdowns that I thought should have been picked off. In the Ayuk throw everyone talks about, where he kind of throws it back behind his body, kind of across the field at about four defenders and just gets a break and comes up with the touchdown. Even Shanahan after the game was like, yeah, that's probably the worst decision he's made as a Niner. And then the other one that he made to George Kittle up the sideline just looked like a heave to me. It looked like I'm getting hit, I'm going to close my eyes and throw it far, and it worked out for a touchdown. So even though they beat that Jacksonville team, I think they're going to have a hard time beating Philly again. And now I will say this about San Francisco. I don't think anyone else in the NFC could beat them in a playoff game besides Philadelphia. So if something happened to Philly, like even Dallas gets hot a game and goes in and knocks them off or something like that, San Francisco, if something happens to Philly, I think should be the clear second team. And I think they're a nightmare for everybody else in the NFC, even more so maybe than Philadelphia. But I think Philadelphia overall is a better team and a team that I would pick to beat San Francisco in a tough game. Other NFC teams, we don't need to talk about the Saints or the Seattle. Dallas, I just don't trust them enough to win 3 road playoff games in a row. And I think that's why you can't lose a game to the Cardinals and take yourself out of the race for the 1 seed in the division, is because it's really, really, really going to be hard for them to win 3 playoff games on the road, even if you like the matchup in the first one. But I'm looking at it, and today, if the playoffs started today, you know what Dallas's first playoff game would be?
What?
In San Francisco. Anyone pick a Dallas to win in San Francisco? Absolutely not. So they're just, I like them. Dak has played great. I'm going to give him some credit. He's played great. I still don't think he's the top tier level guy. I think they look really good against bad teams a lot, but hard to kind of knock what he's done the last few weeks. But I just don't believe in them as true contenders. So, I have Philly. I think they're a really good bet to repeat. And so I actually think we're going to get a rematch in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, yeah, Philly, you got to be in some altered state of mind to not look at the NFC and say, yeah, Philly's obviously the best team.
They should be favored to me. Yeah.
Just from all of that. I do like the Lions, but there is something to be said about having playoff experience as a team. We all know Jared Goff has playoff experience, but like him being a Lion and going through the playoffs whenever the Lions have been one of the most historically bad franchises.
Yeah. And there's something to that. I totally agree. And one thing I'll say about the Lions, just I think it would be really fun and good for the league if they could get the 1 seed, because then I think it would be kind of can someone go into Detroit? Jared Goff's in his indoors in his comfort zone. I think that could really be fun. I still wouldn't pick them to get to the Super Bowl, but I think they're the funnest team in the NFC to watch. I think if they could get the 1 seed, which is on the board because they have a very easy schedule, a lot easier than Phillies down the stretch here, I think it would be fun if the Lions could get the 1 seed. I'll say that about them. And they are a fun team to watch, and they're good, have a lot of weapons. They have some exciting young skill players. The defense gives up a lot of points, which is also kind of exciting, like if we're being honest. So
yeah, no, I think that this year is the Lions learning curve. They're going to go to the playoffs for sure. Not a problem with that. Yeah. They're going to learn what it takes to actually win a game by losing probably a close one. I think they lose out to whoever they're playing in the wild card.
I think they'll win a playoff game. No, I disagree. Right now it'd be Minnesota. I think they'd beat Minnesota at home in a playoff game.
Maybe.
I'm not guaranteeing it. It's not like Dallas going to San Francisco guaranteed to me, or it's like, okay, there's no way that's a matchup, but I think they'll win a playoff game. I think they'll learn a lot. And I'm not picking the Lions to go to the Super Bowl this year, but if I was a Lions fan, I would feel awesome moving forward because I think the team's getting better. I think I know they're really young around Jared Goff. Jared Goff is not going to be one of the more expensive quarterbacks in the league. You're going to get to keep most of these skill guys, if not all of them. I think you're going to be able to kind of stack the roster. You have a stud receiver in St. Brown and what looks like a stud running back in Gibbs. And you know what you need to work on, which is the defensive side of the ball. In the draft, you can almost always find guys who can play defense in the draft. So I think I would feel really good moving forward as a Lions fan for not only the rest of this season, but like especially the years to come.
You're not even mentioning their stud tight end, Laporta. What a
Oh yeah.
freaking
Oh yeah. Well, this draft, just side note, looks like we got some good tight ends. Laporta came on the first and looks awesome. Looks like a superstar tight end. Kincaid now has the opportunities, and despite the Bills not playing well, he's been their silver lining, I think, where he's looked like what they drafted him in the first round to be, which is the best or second best weapon on that offense for Josh Allen. And then Meyer, who plays for the Raiders, that the third tight end taken, also looks really, really good. And it looks like we may have gotten 3 great tight ends from one draft, which is cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I do have to say I'm disappointed in your favorites, and you were rattling off all of your NFC teams that were going to go into the playoffs, and you said the Saints because you're wrong.
Yeah, well, anyway, that's call it that. Anyone in that division can still win. I would love it if the Bucs did. I'm just looking at the standings. The Saints right now are, whoever that is going to get beat in the first round, though. Like it just
their home playoff game.
Right. I think whoever it is going to lose at home in the first round to Seattle or Dallas. May end up.
I was thinking it could be Dallas. Yeah. All right. So who's the most disappointing from the NFC for you?
This one's pretty clear to me. And there wasn't really anyone else I considered, to be honest. You might say, I'll just tell you because you may talk about the other teams. I'm not going to ruin your take here. To me, it's the Panthers because you traded what looks like it's going to be Caleb Williams and DJ Moore, and I think a second and a third additionally for Bryce Young, who may not be a starter in the league. And I said it at the time. I wish we had been doing this at the time of the draft because I wanted this on record. But I said there's no way they traded that much capital to take Bryce Young because it's got to be Anthony Richardson, or I thought it was CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud, my guy, CJ Stroud. I've been saying he should have went first. He's who I would have taken. And it just looks like one of the worst moves a franchise can make where you trade a bunch of draft capital and you don't get the guy. And for a draft where there wasn't a surefire number 1 pick, I like CJ. It was, obviously he didn't go 1, so it wasn't a surefire number 1 pick. I think it was just flatly too much to give up. I think they should have taken their medicine one more year and waited till this next draft where there's a couple one and Caleb Williams almost guaranteed franchise guy. Drake May pretty close to guaranteed franchise guy, and then there's some other options. And the thing is, it would have been one thing like, okay, we're gonna trade, DJ Moore and try to win now, and try to turn the franchise around this year. You got to respect them a little bit for making the attempt to do so. They have only won 1 game. So it's not like they turn it around. It's like it's such a setback to me to them. And the only move worse in the NFL in recent history may end up being the Deshaun Watson move, but at least they're still winning games. So it's like it's a little easier to stomach in Cleveland because they're 6-3. If you're the Panthers, it's like if you have the first pick in the draft again, it's like, oh great, we'll just trade Bryce Young to someone who's a little, willing to take a flyer on him, and we're going to draft another quarterback, but you can't do that now, and the Bears, I think, are going to capitalize and get Caleb Williams and probably Marvin Harrison with their first picks in the draft. And it's just kind of like the Bills, where it's hard to be optimistic moving forward for the Bills right now with the way that the team's looking and the roster is getting constructed. I think the same thing is true for the Panthers, where it's really hard to find their path to be successful in the near future. You know, they have a lot that they need to work on the roster standpoint. It doesn't look like they have the franchise quarterback. I think it's going to be a rough half decade for the Panthers fans after this year, and that's not including this year where they're 1-8 or whatever. So
Yeah.
that's pretty easily the biggest disappointment. I know there's some teams that had higher expectations, but I was going down the roster. I think everyone else has some reason to be optimistic nearly moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, you say almost everyone else, but whenever I look at the NFC, the NFC, I'm not looking at the optimistic views are, the Lions, the Eagles, the 49ers. Those are all the teams that I look at clear optimism. Like, hey, this is as bad as we're going to be like right now. We're pretty much moving in the getting better direction constantly.
Right.
Almost every other team is in a real bad spot because, like, if you just look at the rest of the other teams down in the NFC South, all of them have reason to be really disappointed and kind of like a little bit stressed because you got the Saints who have Derek Carr who can't play right now off of injury that they just locked in to kick their salary cap can down the road, and they are going to have no money. Like literally,
Here's why you give me the team. I'll tell you why they shouldn't be as disappointed as the Panthers. All right.
Saints.
Saints, number one, winning the division today. Easy. Number one in the division right now. Okay. Next team.
Okay. Falcons.
They may draft a quarterback, and Bijan Robinson, they have guys where if they could draft or go get a guy like Kirk Cousins, they could all of a sudden be competing next year.
But they still have their horrible head coach who refuses to give Bijan Robinson the ball. Anyways, okay.
Yeah. I'm not saying they should be overly optimistic. I'm just saying why they should be more optimistic than the Carolina Panthers. Yeah, you go get Kirk Cousins, all of a sudden it's like, okay, shoot, we may have something in Atlanta.
I'm just a half glass half empty kind of guy, I guess.
Really getting to expose the pessimist Alex over here today.
Yeah, I mean, because like the Bucks have the best chance moving forward, I would say, because they decided that they're going to take all of their cap medicine this year, and they're still putting together a moderately decent team. So yeah, like they go get.
You didn't say this in a negative way, but that's why the Bucks should be more optimistic than Carolina.
Well, they should be pessimistic because they're still losing and they've got a crazy schedule coming up. Like starts off tomorrow against the 49ers and it's looking rough.
It's a little ominous maybe for the Bucks. Okay,
But
they'll be able to go sign a bunch of people next year and they draft pretty well usually. I think they can get a turnaround. And Baker has been playing well, which I think, it's like that's more than the Panthers could say about their offensive and quarterback situation, so.
Oh yeah. Then you look at the NFC North. What is the good thing about the Bears?
Oh, they're going to have two of the top 3 picks in the draft.
Okay. What's a good thing about the Vikings with Kirk Cousins going down?
Well, they right now are in the playoff race. And Josh Dobbs looks like he's okay. He looks pretty good. They are slotted to make the playoffs. I think they're going to end up making the playoffs as the 7 seed. And Justin Jefferson is a superstar, and you can move on from Kirk Cousins and try to draft or get another quarterback without losing Justin Jefferson, where whoever you bring in or whether you bring Kirk Cousins back, you have the best receiver in the league. Are we saying that? No, we're both kind of on the same page there. He hadn't even been playing this year, but I think we probably both are on the same page with that. If not, he's damn close to the best receiver in the league.
Yeah.
So, I think there's reason to be optimistic. I mean, they're in the playoffs if it started today.
Packers. Packers. What's the
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I'm not gonna lie. That's a little tougher one. They have a better defense in Carolina, I think. A couple more games. I said almost. I will give you the Packers should be close to
I
Loser Field.
so in
At
my
least they have their pick. Or if you wanted to, they're not going to get Caleb or Drake May, but there's other guys. You could go get Michael Penix, who I love, probably if you're Green Bay. You could draft Shedeur Sanders, who a lot of people think could be an NFL player. It's like there's other first round quarterbacks, and Jordan Love is not being paid like a starter. And that's important too. He's really being paid like a high end backup. And you go draft quarterback, you're not going to pay him much anyway. They're still going to have a cheap quarterback room, assuming Jordan Love isn't the guy, which he's probably not the guy. You have options moving forward because you're not paying him a fortune as far as moving on and making,
yeah. So
stuff.
I was getting
But that's
to
a tougher one. I'll give you the Packers. That's a tougher one.
I was getting to my most disappointing was Packers because
Oh,
I also
yeah.
wanted Jordan Love to work out, and I'm really disappointed in the Rams because last year was supposed to be the hangover year,
Hey,
right? Like, let's just take our medicine and like we're gonna suck, and they did, and
right.
then here they suck again, and there's not much like
The
McVay.
good news for the Rams. Here's the good news for the Rams. And it's not this season, but you have found a gym in Puka Nakua, and you have found a gym in Kyron Williams at two important skill position players, where I think you can then start to move off some of these veterans in Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, while still being competitive and gaining a lot of draft capital to try to rebuild the roster. It's not looking good for this season. They don't really have the depth to compete at a high level, I don't think. But you have pieces to build around and start looking for the next kind of bubble if you're the Rams, and that's the good news for the Rams is you found a couple pieces that you can think about moving forward and try to trade off some veterans who are still producing up to this point. And I think you could still get some draft capital for them. But
Like,
that's another one that's not looking great.
you have
Yeah.
to trust that Sean McVay isn't going to retire. Also, like that's the other
Yeah.
thing. It's
And
like,
Stafford might retire
yeah,
because I'm not. I don't. If I'm Matthew Stafford, man, I would retire. Not gonna lie. It's like
out of ring. I keep getting hurt. I'm done.
he doesn't have a lot of ways he could drastically improve his historical legacy, even if they won another ring. I don't think it would be a ton different. He kind of did what he did in NFL, which was put up a lot of numbers on a terrible organization. The first year he went to a good one, they won the Super Bowl. It's like that's a lot of guys take that career. You know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of guys that would take that Matthew Stafford career, and he may be a Hall of Famer. He's pretty close, pretty close, and
Yeah.
I think he kind of just go hang out. It's like he could probably get on TV. He's a charming enough guy. I think it's like probably fine. Or just hang out and count. Just hang out.
He's yeah, just Kirk Cousins. Look at Matthew Stafford. You're not going to get that high. You're not going to hit a Super Bowl.
Right.
Leave whatever you're at your high so you don't, start doing.
I think if Kirk went to the Steelers and could stay healthy for a season, they would have a shot at it. I'll say that.
All right. All
I
right.
brought I brought that idea up. I think with Deontay Johnson, who's a route like guru, and George Pickens, who's kind of the prototype number one freak receiver in the NFL, the running game and the defense, I think they'd have a real shot at it if you bring in Kirk Cousins for a year. I will say. No, if that doesn't happen, if he goes to Atlanta or something like that, probably not. But
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
we'll
Well, we got a little bit of time. I want to get your thoughts on how this NBA picture is shaping up this year.
hey, yeah,
It's
let's do
been
it.
a pretty interesting start to the year. Draymond Green assaulted a player and had his coach screaming at him to let him go. and he just wouldn't. And so that's a good sign if you're Golden State.
Sure.
What have you been seeing? What are some of these players, some of these rookies that you're liking, or what are some of the combos these teams?
Okay, let's talk first about, you said rookie. Victor Wembanyama is all he's been advertised to be, I think, so far. Now he's very raw still. He's pretty mature for his age as far as his game, but they need a true point guard who can get him the ball, and he is not quite there yet, which almost no rookie is. But he has shown flashes. I really think he's going to end up being the best player in the league in about 3 or 4 years. He just looks so dynamic on both sides of the ball, on both ends of the court, where the defense is already there. He's maybe the best rim protector in the league already, honestly. Like he's up there with anybody as far as blocking shots and protecting the rim. I think the offense, he has enough elements to his game. If he continues to work on them, he's shown the ability, he's going to be a good enough jump shooter. And I think there were some questions about that because his efficiency in this foreign career, just it wasn't very high. He wasn't a very efficient shooter, although the jump shot looks nice. It looks like he's going to be a good enough shooter to me. And I like what they're doing with him. They're putting him a little more in the Kevin Garnett face up mid range spot on the court, and kind of letting him shoot free throw line jump shots over people, which he's a little better at right now. And I think that's where he could really make a career and be a dominant force is from the mid range. He can shoot the three well enough. So, yeah, I think he's all this panned out to be. Golden State, it's remarkable what Steph Curry's able to do. And the fact that they won the championship a couple of years ago, like watching them now, it's like Steph gets even more credit for that ring after watching what Jordan Poole's looked like in Washington and what Draymond has digressed to, and Clay is clearly a shell of himself. It's like, man, Steph, way to go, buddy. It's like, like you're just out here 35 years old, Paul, and I think in the West, the Denver's so much better, I think, than anyone in the West. The Mavs look pretty good. I don't know that they can beat Denver in a 7-game series, to be honest. Luka's awesome. Luka he's got a real shot to win MVP this year. And I've kind of thought that the last 2 seasons going into it, and was pretty low on him to win the MVP this year. And it looks like this is finally going to be the year where he may do it because he's been awesome. They are tied for the best record in the West right now. But Denver to me is head and shoulders better than anybody, not just in the West, by the way. I think they're head and shoulders better than anybody in the league. I think if anyone's being honest with themselves, they should be the favorite to repeat, and it should be more a conversation. Is it Denver versus the field as opposed to Denver versus any other specific team? Like I think that's where Denver's at as far as a franchise. And Jokic just like you seen probably not. Have you seen any of his stats this year?
No.
It's just he's his last game they lost. He had 26, 16, and 18 assists in a loss, but it's like all his games, it's like you just check any night that Denver plays. It's 32, 15, and 9. Yeah, that's about what he's gonna give you. It's like just unbelievable. He had a game this season where he scored 32 points on 15 shots. Like he really just really elevated to the next level, I think. And we see some players take a leap. Historically, we've seen players once they get the first ring kind of take a leap to another level. They gain another level of confidence. They've been there before. The team's been there before and knows how to support them. And I totally think that's what we're seeing with Denver, where I would be, unless there is a major injury in the postseason, being obviously Jokic, but even Jamal Murray, if he was out for the postseason or something like that, it would be tough. But I'd be pretty surprised if they didn't at least get back to the finals. I'd be stunned if they didn't at least get back to the finals. And I would be pretty surprised if they didn't win it at this point. In the East, the team that may challenge them the most and that I really like is Philadelphia. I think they totally got the better end of the Harden deal because they just got him out the building. It's like they just got him out the building. And have you seen any of the James Harden quotes this year? Because in an interview, he was like, well, we hadn't lost yet because I'm still getting back into shape and I hadn't been at training camp and I hadn't picked a basketball since I went to the strip club in the summertime. It's like all these crazy quotes. It's like, what you could have been doing, even if you weren't going to play for Philly, is staying in shape and playing basketball, but it's really bizarre stuff. I think the Clippers totally got screwed in that deal. I think Philadelphia, addition by subtraction, Tyrese Maxey is totally stepping into the role they were hoping he could take over, which is the second best player on that team. Had his first 50-point game this season, Tyrese Maxey, which is a big deal when you have your second guy has the ability to drop 50 is a huge deal for a team like Philly. And Embiid playing at an MVP level again, and maybe the most underrated offseason acquisition, and a guy that I was really hoping was going to go to a great team like Philadelphia, and who I thought this was going to be a huge advantage, either if it was Milwaukee or Philadelphia bringing him in, is Nick Nurse. I think Nick Nurse is one of the most underrated coaches in the league. If he's not in the conversation for the best coach in the league, he's pretty close to it. And we saw him the one year they really had the horses to win the finals in Toronto. He won the finals. They brought in Kawhi, won it the first year. He's really fast about putting lineups together, about getting guys in spots where they can be successful. He brings a level of consistency and kind of calm to a team that I think is probably a great change of pace for Embiid and the Sixers, where they've been dealing with a lot of drama the last few years. We have been Ben Simmons and James Harden, and the coaching hadn't exactly worked, and there's been some turbulence. I think Nick Nurse was the perfect guy to bring in. Milwaukee, I like a lot. They may have taken a bigger step back on defense than I anticipated, trading Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard. And I think Chris Middleton is no longer able to be that elite two-way player. He was, when they won the finals, he was one of the best defenders on the wing in the league. And he doesn't look like that anymore to me, where they're going to have to get better before they're really on the level of Philly. Or I know a lot of people like Boston. I can't say I blame him. I think Boston looks really good. Drew Holiday is the kind of guy that plays winning basketball. I think is really, really tough and is an upgrade from Marcus Smart and a better offensive player. And they brought him in. Then Porzingis, if he's like your fourth best player, is a scary player. Because Porzingis is a guy who can drop 40 any night. And when that's your fourth best guy, that's a tough team, and he can be infuriating if you're a fan of his team. Everyone, a lot of nights where he doesn't always play to his strengths. He doesn't always bring the effort on defense, but he has the rim protecting ability. They have the perimeter defense ability. And I think they are a really good fit and even better than I anticipated. But I like Philly's coach enough. I think Philly has the horses to run with them. And I think the coaching mismatch between Philly and Boston is why I like Philly a little bit more right now. And so I would think it'd be Philly and Denver, and probably a fun series. You have Embiid is maybe the best matchup for Jokic in the league, and Jokic is the best player in the league. So it'd be a fun series if that ends up coming to fruition.
Oh yeah. Well, I second all of that because I don't watch enough NBA.
Right, because you hadn't been watching enough to know what's going on yet. We'll move on to that. It's football season. We'll move on to that later,
We're in the thick of football season. We're coming
Absolutely.
down the stretch. This is where the teams start showing you what they're really made of. This is where everybody's like, all right, we've watched enough tape. So I'm football all the way. I have been keeping a little bit of an eye on some NBA stuff, so I don't sound like a complete idiot whenever I talk, but I'm glad that I have an amazing co-host in Tate Slatton.
Thank you. What a compliment. All right, Alex, we have gone pretty long today. So one word, who's the MVP in the NFL so far? No, given the projections for the rest of the season, what you think is going to happen? Who do you think will end up winning the MVP?
Oh man. I'm just gonna go with my gut. Jalen Hurts.
I think that's a good bet. They've been pretty good. He was so close to winning it last year. I think he'll get some brownie points from voters this year. And if they're the 1 seed with their schedule, that's pretty amazing. So I think that's a good bet. And Mahomes haven't played like it. My guy, CJ Stroud. I think they're going to win 10 games. They are not a very good team around him. And if he gets to the playoffs in the AFC, wins 10 games, I think he's going to win it. I really do. I think he's going to end up winning it because there's not a clear cut other candidate who's been amazing, and I think he's been the most impressive player and will continue to be so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank everyone for tuning in. This has been episode 9 of Two Takes with Alex and Tate. And we are going to try to get back at our normal routine of doing this on a weekly basis. And we appreciate the support and the patience from everyone. And we will see everyone next week.